would like to welcome you to the third annual Anderson A.J. Franklin Unity Against Racism lecture. I'd also like to welcome those who are joining us via live stream. Where's the camera? Oh, there's the camera. Particularly, I'd like to welcome Dr. Nancy Boyd Franklin, who is unable to be with us this evening. And Nancy, we look forward to you connecting with us next year. While we gather this evening to express our deep gratitude to AJ for your tireless and courageous work, so powerfully captured AJ in being one of the Richmond 34. We also recognize that as we congregate this evening, we do so under the growing threat of authoritarian dictates that in part seek to undo decades of progress towards racial equality, to reinstitute a racial hierarchy, and to aggressively shut down the voices of dissent and resistance. Furthermore, on a more global scale, we note the ongoing impact of colonization and settlerism with its accompanying denial of human rights and its enabling of racial and ethnic discrimination. It is within this context that we gather this evening. So AJ, it's unfortunate to say that while we acknowledge the fight against racism, it's possible that this fight is still as urgent and possibly even more urgent as we gather this evening. However, we do thank you for the path that you've laid for us, AJ. And we commit to keeping that path alive. We choose to forge ahead with wisdom, with integrity, and with courage. And we do so leaning on the lessons that you have taught us so very well. We thank you. We are deeply grateful. Before I ask Dr. Patricia Lowe to come up and introduce our speaker for this evening, Dr. Tamer Bryant, there are just a few thank yous that I have to say. Firstly, I need to recognize that we are here partly because of the wonderful work of Janet Helms, who started the Institute in the year 2000 in an attempt to bring more focus to the study of race and culture in psychology. It is with gratitude and with deep humility that I am honored to continue the work that Janet started so many years ago. I'm deeply grateful to the support of the Dean of the School of Education, Stanton Witham, who recognizes the ongoing need and importance of this type of institute. There are many other people to thank, but I'd like to thank my students who work with me. I would like to thank some of my colleagues who are here from the Department of, what is our department? Counseling, Developmental, Educational, so that's a mouthful. And finally, I'd love to thank Crystal Cunningham. Crystal, where are you? Okay. Crystal is the Institute coordinator. Without her, we would not be here this evening. And in thanking her, I'd also like to proudly congratulate Crystal because she will be joining our doctoral cohort starting this fall. I was determined to make sure that Crystal would not go too far away. So with all of that said, I'd love to invite Dr. Patricia Lowe to join us to introduce Dr. Tamer Bryant. Dr. Lowe joins us in a capacity as the Associate Vice President for the Office of Institutional, can we say that word? Institutional Diversity. We appreciate your commitment to creating an inclusive, welcoming space for all at this campus. Thank you very much.
Before I get started, I'm going to say, Dr. Franklin, I feel honored, blessed, and graced. Had an opportunity to break bread before this we came here, and I was taking in not just the nourishment, but the nourishment of the wisdom that you are sharing. So trust that it is here, and it will go out this way as well. So thank you so much. So with that, I would please join me in welcoming Dr. Thema Bryant, who is currently the tenured professor of psychology in the Graduate School of Education and Psychology at Pepperdine University, where she directs the Culture and Trauma Research Laboratory. I will say there's a whole lot when we talk about people who have accomplished quite a bit. And when I heard you just whispered, you were sharing your age, I went, wait, all that in that short time? Whoa, I got to start running. But with that, I also recognize and want to share with you, Dr. Bryant is a psychologist, author, professor, sacred artist, and minister who is leading the way in creating healthy relationships, healing trauma, and overcoming stress and oppression. Dr. Bryant is the author of Homecoming, which paints a roadmap for dismantling fear and shame to live a free and authentic life. The Anti-Racism Handbook, Practical Tools to Shift Your Mindset and Uproot Racism in Your Life and Community. And Reclaim Yourself, the Homecoming Workbook. And I encourage you to, if you haven't purchased, put it on your bookshelf, because the key thing here is that it doesn't go away. Because again, where we are right now is, will these information be available tomorrow? And I say, yes, it will. With the grace and mercy, yes, it will. Dr. Bryant has raised public awareness regarding mental health by extending the reach of psychology beyond the academy and private therapy office through community programming and media engagement, including but not limited to Headline News, National Public Radio, CBS, The Washington Post, and LA Times and CNN. And I'm gonna stop right there because there's a whole lot, but I don't want to take time away from Dr. Thema Bryant in sharing what she has to share with us today. But please put your hands together in welcoming Dr. Thema here with us today.
Don't you know we're talking about a revolution? Sounds like a whisper. Don't you know we're talking about a revolution? Sounds like a whisper. Welcome to the front lines. It is 2025 and you dare to show up to a program focused on racism. May I have that handheld? I am so grateful to be here and to be in good company. I want to give acknowledgments and appreciation both for that beautiful introduction. I'm so grateful for the leadership, the director of the Institute, who is leading this charge with courage and with clarity and with consistency. And when I received the email and found out it was the lecture honoring Dr. A.J. Franklin, I immediately said yes, because of who he is. Give him a big hand, please. He is a trailblazer and a pioneer in the field who has spoken and broken through barriers that many of us have then been able to reap a harvest and benefit as a result of his sacrifice and the sacrifice of his wife. And we are grateful. We don't take any of it for granted. It is one thing for people to wax poetic and write about liberation. It's another thing to live it. It is semi-easy to write articles on these issues. It is another level of commitment for it to show up in your mentorship, in your teaching, in your research, in your practice, in your policy, and standing by your commitments such that there are consequences when they are not honored. And so we see your example and are running behind you. I am so grateful for those of you who came and do not know me. I'm also appreciative of those who came as a result of us being able to share in social media about this event. And then a personal note of privilege. I'm so excited that one of my key mentors, aunties, another mother is here, Reverend Gloria Hammond, Reverend Dr. Gloria Hammond. Thank you for being here. And they hosted me on yesterday at Bethel AME Church for a book reading, a book signing for my book, Matters of the Heart. So it's been a wonderful homecoming. And then my mentor from the Victims of Violence program, Dr. Mary, is here. Wave your hand so they can see you. When I arrived at the Victims of Violence program, it was the year 2000, right after graduating from Duke University and coming up here for my internship and then for my postdoc. I am so glad that Dr. Usha is here, who I also got to know at the Victims of Violence program, and my poetry sisters, Crystal and Ioka, let them see you. Brilliant, brilliant artists. And back in the day when I was here, we were a part of the Blackout Arts Collective and would just have fire, fire, fire with our poetry and dancing and singing and visual art. And so I'm grateful. And then because I do come from a community tradition where we have call and response, I want to appreciate each of you for being here because everybody is somebody. And so I don't believe that you will just sit for 45 minutes and stare at me. It's going to be interactive. So I ask that you just turn to the person next to you and tell them, welcome to the VIP section. Yes, I thought you should know. I thought you should know you are sitting with a very important person. And speaking of important people and people's commitment to these issues, I want to appreciate Reverend Quick, Pastor Quick, for coming, I believe, the farthest on today, aside from me, coming in from New Jersey, and Dr. Franklin. Thank you so much for being present and for lifting up this liberation work. Shall we begin? So the good news about healing is we recognize there's a wound, but that's not the end of the story. So trauma affects us, but it does not define us. There are some things that have been written on the page of your life that you did not choose. Somebody say, but now I have the pen. But now I have the pen. Some people wrote some things, whether we're talking about physical abuse or abandonment, intimate partner violence, community violence, various forms of oppression, but they don't get to dictate the fullness of your story, the fullness of your narrative. And so, yes, we are recognizing the devastating effects of racism, but there is work that we can do that is about liberation. So liberation goes beyond centering the wounds. Liberation calls for your active imagination and what will healing, wholeness, wellness, thriving, flourishing look like. There is more to me than what has been done to me. There is more to me than my reactions to other people's ignorance. And so post-traumatic growth is a part of that journey. And so we think very intentionally, not just about symptom cessation. Any psychology majors here? Very good. When you're doing the healing work, it's not enough to just follow the model, which is often, how do you decrease depression? How do you decrease anxiety? How do you decrease suicidality? All of that is fine and important. But we want to really think about, how do we promote flourishing? Do you know that you may not be suicidal and still not have joy? That you can decrease your panic attacks and still not have a sense of purpose? So when we are walking people through this healing process, we don't just center decreasing the pain, we want to maximize the life. And so I want to live the fullness of life, the abundance of life. And then I have to say from the very beginning, when we talk about the fullness of life, I want you to know justice is therapeutic. Justice, even more than taking a deep breath, even more than drinking lavender tea, which I love, even more than aromatherapy. I love the scent of honeysuckle. All those things are lovely. But if I can live with safety and fairness, a lot of distress would go down. If I can count on things being fair, and my bodily integrity, and my human rights being secure, it would help me to sleep better. It would help me to release some of the distress in my body. And so we want to be very clear from the onset, even though we're using the terminology of healing, healing is not just an individual matter. Healing is about the collective. Healing is on a societal level, because some people, when they hear that, they say, oh, that doesn't sound like psychology. That sounds political. Surprise, everything is political. And so it is not just about helping people shift their thoughts. If it's just about shifting cognitions, it assumes the problem is that for some reason you have distorted cognitions, right? That we have no reason why, but for some reason a lot of women have body image issues. They're just distorted thoughts. As if we are not bombarded with messages from very early that tell us that we are not enough, right? Too thick, too thin, too dark, too light, hair too curly, hair too straight. There is a whole system designed to talk you out of your beauty. And that system is also racialized. And so if I can name that and get clear on that, the healing is not just about helping people to see themselves as worthy, but for us to create societies, communities, families where we honor each other sacredly. If you agree, you can say amen. If you're a feminist, you can say a woman. If you're Afrocentric, you can say ashe. If you're of a certain generation, you can say that's what's up. If you don't like it, you can say ouch. So I am a woman of African descent. And along with being a psychologist, and you heard the resume, I also want to name that I am a daughter, I am a mother, I'm a sister, I'm an activist, an advocate, an artist, a minister, and I reject colonized notions that professionalism means I am supposed to mute myself. I reject a colonial standpoint that says to be a professional, you have to erase and reduce anything about you that is uniquely you. So that only applies to certain people. And I like to say, when I come into a space, I reject tokenism. Tokenism is when people want your name in the face, your face in the place, so they can put it on a brochure, put you on their website. They can count on their little graph, the end of the year, we got one. But they don't want the system or the community or the campus or the department to shift. So it is not an inclusive environment if what is required is for me to think like you, talk like you, dress like you, act like you. Then what you're just wanting is more of yourself. So instead, whenever you show up in a place, when you are committed to not being tokenized, you bring the fullness of yourself into the place. And as opposed to that being marginalizing to other people, when I show up in the fullness of myself, guess what? People get free and they have permission to show up in the fullness of themselves. Is that all right? Yes. And so I want to also recognize this land has been cultivated by indigenous peoples, and we're able to walk here, to study here, to learn here because of those who historically and in contemporary times need to be honored for the ways, especially now, that they have cultivated the protection of earth and water and air. Not only do we give land recognition, but also labor recognition. The United States developed at a very rapid pace. How did it do that? Based on exploited labor. Historically, largely the labor of people of African descent. In contemporary times, often those are persons who are immigrants to this country who are exploited, underpaid, not paid at all, survivors of human trafficking. And so we want to recognize the labor and the laborers. I want to help us to be free from any false arrogance. Even though you are brilliant, there are brilliant people who were not able to come here, right? It's not just the top of the top, and people who didn't come just weren't smart enough. So we want to all acknowledge opportunity and privilege that has allowed us to be here on today. It doesn't dismiss your hard work. It just means hard work is not the end of the story. If that makes you nervous, just take a breath. Inhale in through the nose. Exhale out through the mouth. Very good. I want to also say, as we talk about racism, that I am not just talking about helping people on campus to cope with racism that happens out there. A lot of institutions are very comfortable saying, can you come and help our students cope with what they're seeing online? Can you come help them cope because in some faraway city, someone was murdered? And so the reason I am here is because racism is here. Yeah, it's here. And so when we talk about dismantling it, it is not just something symbolic in some faraway place. We want to even think about how we decolonize our curriculum, not because we're trying to do people a favor by including their literature. It is that people have made contributions to the scholarship in every field that is not just white cisgender men. And so to understand your field, you need to have read the contributions of people who are shaping the field. And often those have been unrecognized. I also want to say from the beginning that I resist and reject the notion of neutrality. People want to pretend as if it's hard for you to be a scholar about racism because you care too much. Right? She's not objective. Well, neither are you, right? Neither are you. You're actually quite comfortable with racism and would really love me to study and talk about something else. So often we think other people have a worldview, especially marginalized people. We say, you know, what is the queer worldview? What is the Black worldview? What is the immigrant worldview? And I say, what's your worldview? Oh, I'm just regular. I don't have a world, I'm just American. So we need to see ourselves and know that all of us enter the space based on our lived experience. Yes, we study. Yes, we have literature, but also we have been shaped and socialized by socializing agents, including your family, including the media, including the educational system. So I love written word and spoken word. The great African-American poet Lucille Clifton ends one of her poems with this line: "Come and celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. Come and celebrate with me that every day something has tried to break my spirit, something has tried to overlook me, something has tried to erase me, and guess what? It didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work." Turn and tell somebody, I'm still here. I'm still here. There's a Mexican proverb that says, they tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. Oh, what a story of triumph. So the narrative is not just what was done to you, but that you come from a line of people who survived it, who persisted, who were clear that that story of trauma and oppression is real, but it is not my only story. Yes? So as we think about having liberation, a part of liberation is to be able to speak truth. And so psychologically, we want to speak the truth that we have been affected by the trauma and drama that is happening in our nation and that is happening globally. We reject and resist dehumanization that requires us to be happy all the time. And so the truth is, you can feel more than one thing at the same time. You might be relieved that you turned in a paper and you're anxious about some policies that are happening. You might even be outraged about some things that are happening while you're also grateful for some other things. So in a moment of truth-telling and bearing witness, I'm going to invite you to just share with the person next to you 2 different things you have felt today. 2 different things. Go ahead. As you think about what you're feeling, I invite you to consider demographically who's allowed to have those emotions. The things that you're feeling, who's allowed to express them, who's allowed to present them, who is it expected of, who is it not expected or accepted for. And so honoring our humanity is one of the ways that we push back on racism, that some people get nervous when I talk about racial trauma. Sometimes it's people outside of our communities who will want to dismiss it as traumatizing, but sometimes it's people within the community who want to only present us as super strong. And what I say to that is, if we can only be strong in the face of racism and other forms of oppression, it dehumanizes us so that all these terrible things are happening, but we're all good. So to honor our humanity is, yes, attend to our strengths, but also to attend to and address the wounds. So I invite you to hold space for what you have been carrying. We are being so busy, and one of the things I discovered firsthand is that busy is not the same thing as healed. You can be very, very busy and falling apart on the inside. Yes? Turn and tell somebody, you wear it well. You wear it well. Nobody would guess it. Good job. But we want to honor what we've been holding, including the wounds of racism. I practice body sovereignty, so anything I offer is an invitation. You check in with yourself to decide if you want to do it. If you don't want to do it, guess what? Don't do it. So your invitation is one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart, inhaling in through your nose, exhaling out through your mouth. And then embrace yourself, inhaling in through your nose, exhaling out through your mouth. Turn and tell the person next to you, you look better. Look better. So we learn to be present, and we also learn to speak truth. So to speak truth and creating an atmosphere for speaking truth, I want to teach you a little chant. It just goes, silence no more, I was born to roar. And when I say this, I don't just mean for marginalized people to roar. I mean for us collectively to roar, because racism is all of our problems. Yes? So when we sing this chant, the first time I sing it, it goes up. The second time it goes down. If that means nothing to you, just let the notes fall out of your mouth. Silence no more, I was born to roar. Silence no more, I was born to roar. Again, silence no more, I was born to roar. Silence no more, I was born to roar. Free your hands, we're gonna do it in sign language because that's how we roll. Silence no more, I was born to roar. Silence no more, I was born to roar. Give yourselves a hand. And so what that means is we give voice to racism, and we are not intimidated out of talking about it. So people who are promoting racism move strategically. One of their strategies is gaslighting, where they act like people who talk about racism are the problem. Isn't that masterful? I mean, that's some really slick stuff, right? That racism is not the problem. It's that you all keep talking about it, and that is what is making everybody uncomfortable, and everything would be okay if you stopped talking about it. It's like when people were marching, and a beautiful quote was shared online, which was, "They were so focused on our rage, they did not see our grief." So people were marching because people were being killed. But the problem in many people's eyes wasn't that people were being killed, it's that you all are marching or kneeling or doing anything except serving. So we move beyond awareness to active engagement. Again, for my psychology majors, we're not just talking about cultural competence. Cultural competence is often thought of as awareness, knowledge, and skills. It's wonderful to be aware. You should have knowledge of various cultures, skills to work with other people, and it is also important to be actively anti-racist. Actively anti-oppression. What are you doing in your practice to safeguard people against the wounds and the violations of racism? And ignoring it or waiting for them to bring it up is not being actively anti-racist. So we operate with humility, but engagement. It's also important not to be distracted by people who are more comfortable with you calling it bias. Racism is bigger than bias. Bias is a word people are comfortable with because, like, we all have biases. It's an accident. People didn't mean any harm. We can't help it. We all have biases. If we're only talking about an individual act, then I could just stay away from people who are biased against my group, right? So if 2 doors down from me, someone is biased against Black people, I just won't go there. Right? It's that simple. It's like when we tell kindergartners, if they don't want to play with you, you go make some new friends. Don't you worry about it. Racism is systemic. It is structural. It is institutionalized. It is unavoidable. When you are just trying to live your life, applying for a bank loan, racism shows up. Applying for a job, racism shows up. In housing, it shows up. In healthcare, it shows up. In the education system, it shows up. You don't go looking for it, it comes and finds you. And so recognizing that it is structural and systemic changes our response. Instead of us just telling people they need to ignore it, we recognize collectively we need to dismantle it. So it is an ethical guideline that we have, those of us who are mental health professionals, to not ignore people's cultural context. Now, often when we talk about that, people are comfortable talking about food and gender roles and what they say are values. They will, it's like places that like to have cultural potlucks. That's a good first step. And I love food, that's great. But that can't be the end of the journey because we already like each other's food for the most part. So like, what did that do? So we have to actually start to think beyond kind of what are cultural norms or traditions to also address cultural oppression, to address stigma and stereotype, and to acknowledge those things exist. Here it is, without the fragility showing up that when other people talk about their pain, I have to make it about me, right? I mean, what would it look like for me as a straight woman to go to an LGBTQ program and they're schooling us on transphobia, heterosexism, and I'm like, what about me? What about me? I have so. Now, can you be present with somebody else's pain? This isn't your story. This isn't your day. This isn't your moment. Learn and humble yourself. Yes? So we need to not be so fragile that we're offended when other people talk about their pain. Now, the reason some of us get offended is because we identify with the harm doers. And so we feel the need to say, like, are you sure? Or I know they didn't mean it. We want to talk them out of it because it would make us more comfortable, right? It reminds me of in my multicultural psychology class, I had someone to come in and talk about disabilities, and the person uses a wheelchair, and she said that as she was coming across the campus, she experienced the microaggression of everyone she passed looking away, and how hurtful it was that nobody would look at her. Now, in my ego fragile self, the first thought that came to my mind was, I know I've looked away because we're trying to do that thing of I'm not going to stare, right? But instead of me saying, well, they didn't mean any harm, no, I had to take in, how does it feel for you to move through a space and everybody avert their gaze? I had to hear that, yes? So there is something that we can learn by attending to people's hearts, yes? So we want to end the denial and the minimization around racial trauma. Trauma was first talked about as we think about veterans, post-traumatic stress disorder, that people come back from war, and then we help them to heal. And then people pushed and said, no, trauma occurs in other places as well, child abuse and sexual assault and school shootings. And some people would say, well, they haven't been to war. And we had to educate people to say some people's war was in their childhood bedroom. Some people's war was in their school or in their community. And so people said, yes, that's true. Those are all different types of trauma. So now those of us who do work around oppression have started talking about societal trauma, intergenerational trauma, historical trauma, ancestral wounds. And there are some gatekeepers who want to deny that it is trauma, because they got their stuff approved and now they want to close the door. And what they will actually say to me, psychologists in the field will say to me, Thema, if you call racism a trauma, then everything's a trauma, which means nothing is a trauma, so it loses its value. Isn't that something? That your violation counts and anybody else's will dilute the category. Or they will say racism is just a lowercase t because it's just emotional abuse, but assault is a capital T trauma. Now, I stand before you as both an assault survivor and a survivor of racism to say, how in the world is the violation of one person a capital T and the violation of generations a lowercase t? And if you think it's just emotional, you haven't been paying attention. And so we take in the reality of the historical and contemporary traumas and the ways in which it affects us and the ways it affects the ways in which we were parented. One of my moments I recall is I was so excited when I passed my driver's license test, AJ. I came home to show my license to my dad. I was so proud. And he was beaming until he looked at my license. And when he looked at my license, his face fell. And my father's a preacher, very like fiery preacher. So I have only seen him down very few times. So he's looking at my license and his facial countenance is like he's trying to figure out how he failed me. And the reason he's wondering how he failed me is he couldn't believe that I was naive enough to put on my license yes to being an organ donor. He, at 80, well, now he's 81, he at that time said to me, Thema, do you really believe if your life is hanging in the balance and a white person needs your organs, that they're going to do everything they can to save you when one of them needs your organs? He couldn't believe that somehow, with everything he had taught me, that somehow I had missed that message. Now, some people will hear that and say, oh, paranoid. There is something called healthy paranoia when you think people are after you and they are. Medical racism is real. It is documented. And so there is a reason why people show up in spaces in a particular way based on the lives they have lived in those traumatic wounds. And so we respond to trauma in various ways. And I want those of you who have experienced racism to give yourself grace and compassion. Some of us freeze. Have you ever had somebody do something racist and you were just stunned? Right? I'm one of those. So like, I'll tell you, my brother and my good friend, Rosalind Brookins, they're like quick on it. Like they're quick on the comeback. I'm a therapist. So it's like hours later and I'm like, now what I should have said. I want to say, give yourself grace, because the beautiful thing is when it happens in circles where you know people, you can come back to it. Right? There was something that happened at last week's class or in last faculty meeting or whatever this was, and I want us to talk about it. Yes? So sometimes if it's strangers, you're like, I missed the moment. A lot of times it's not strangers. So to not feel bad for a delayed reaction. Some of us not only freeze, some of us flee. And do you know you'll leave jobs your whole life if when racism shows up, you leave? Right? I mean, yeah, okay, go find another job. Then we'll see what happens there. And then we have the unfortunate reality of internalized racism. That's when you come to believe the lies that have been told about your own community. Right? So we want to be able to heal those. And then some of us go into tend and befriend. Tend and befriend is usually like in domestic violence, if people figure out who's the powerful abusive parent and they try to side with them to protect themselves. When it comes to racism, that's people of color who try to get into good graces with white people to the detriment of their own community because they want to be the good one. Well, we asked Tama and she said that wasn't racist. She said you were just being sensitive. And she's the good one that we all like. So you want to check yourself to think about, how do I usually respond? And while I give myself grace, I also want to respond from a healthy, grounded, and clear place. So when we talk about liberation psychology, it is about looking not just at the individual, but looking at systems and how we can be a part of changing those systems. And here's a key part. It is not just about coping. It is about this word, resist. Somebody say resist. If someone, a client, was experiencing sexual harassment, you would not think about just having them take deep breaths and download a mindfulness app and go back to work, right? But when it comes to racism, we want to just teach people to calm their nervous system and to go back. So instead, we want to help people to think about if it feels better than you. Some people get nervous about the word resistance. If it feels better for you, you can call it problem-solving coping. Right? Emotion-focused coping is good. You could journal, you could talk to a friend, you could drink some tea, you could go to therapy. Problem-solving coping is, what am I going to do about the racism that I am facing? And so it is our role therapeutically to help people think through, what are my options and what I can do so that I can be safer and my family can be safer. So there are many branches in psychology that connect with liberation psychology. It is also important to recognize intersectionality. Intersectionality is when you have multiple marginalized identities. So we think about gendered racism. We think about AJ's work looking at Black men. So with our multiple identities, how does racism show up in particular, and how do we heal? We ask the question, not just what happened to you, but what happened to your community, and what are the ways that you are healing so that you can thrive. I developed a model on healing racial trauma. It's about acknowledging it, being able to share and tell the story, building trust in myself and others, healing my internalized racism, mourning the losses because racism takes things from you, having a safe space to name my anger. And we know from Victims of Violence program the difference between constructive anger and destructive anger. So I don't want to be devoured by my anger, but great change agents have often been mobilized about injustice. Right? So you may become a rape crisis counselor. You might be a part of a community watch program. You might sign a petition. You might run for office, but it is my outrage about outrageous things that can lead me to do some constructive action. Dr. Howard Stevenson talks about the importance of being able to recognize racism. If I can't recognize it, I won't be able to heal from it. Somebody say, face it to fix it. Liberation psychology also honors testimonials. In the Black church, we would call it the testimony service. There is something healing about telling our stories. It is about breaking the shame and breaking the silence and helping other people to get through it. And so there are the ways that we soothe our nervous system, but then it is also important for us to take action. There are many different models for healing racial trauma. I have to say that because during Black Lives Matter, when all of these corporations were asking me to come and speak, when I would talk about racial trauma, they would say, it sounds like you all need a theory. We have theories, we have interventions, we have models, we have whole frameworks that you never learned anything about. It already exists, yes? So we want to be aware our models for healing are present, and we want to indigenize our healing. It is arrogant, and I say this as a therapist, someone who goes to therapy, someone who provides therapy, to say it is arrogant to believe that psychotherapy is the only pathway for healing. It is human history shows us people lived before we created this, yes? So we honor healing in community, healing with our spirituality, healing through the arts so that we can be well. Let me tell you, if you are a change agent, and I hope you will be, it can also be draining, exhausting, and you can be targeted. But we rest and don't quit. And that's why you have to keep in mind, what is the thing that I'm working toward that will help me stay motivated to do the work that I am trying to do? This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. If we could knock out racism in the next 3 months, I would say don't sleep, don't eat, let's just go in, let's just knock it out. We can sleep later. Racism, unfortunately, is intergenerational. We will be continuing to address it for your lifetime. So then you want to think about how it will be sustainable to you. Because racism is interdisciplinary, the fight against it has to be interdisciplinary, and we don't want to have these false hierarchies where my way of protesting is more significant than yours. We need all hands on deck. So some of you will do it through science, some of you will do it through literature, some of you will do it in your parenting. There are multiple ways to attack it, and I honor the ways in which you are actively going to work to dismantle racism in all of its forms. It is not just about a checklist of saying, I'm culturally competent. We want to know, are you engaged in the struggle? And on Trans Visibility Day, there was a quote online that said, if you have not been hit by some of the stones meant for members of that community, you're not standing close enough. And so I hope you will stand close enough for us to be in solidarity and so that we can shift it together. So in closing, if you can just join me with this. We are one family and none can separate us. None can separate us. None can separate us. We are one family and none can separate us. No, no, never. You ready? Tell the person next to you, I bet you sound like Beyonce. You do. I bet you do. All right, let's try it again. We are one family and none can separate us. None can separate us. None can separate us. We are one family and none can separate us. No, no, never. Give yourselves a big hand.
I'd like to invite Dr. Anderson A.J. Franklin to share a few thoughts with us. And I would like to thank you, Dr. Bryant, because sitting there, I experienced healing. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. PDC. It is a honor to have the opportunity to once again be here and back at Boston College, but certainly to be in this position to have the honor of, it's hard to say, the Anderson A.J. Franklin Unity Against Racism. Let me repeat that. Unity Against Racism lecture. I think that the presentation we just had by Dr. Tamar Bryant speaks to the importance of the theme of this lecture, Unity Against Racism, because certainly racism is traumatizing. And if you have not been in the trenches or even close to the trenches, then you don't know what I'm talking about, because it does beat you up. You do get a few bumps and even more than that. And just listening to Dr. Bryant and her comments, it certainly takes me back to the many years of being involved with this. And as I said to her, and I guess Dr. Lowe, and at dinner, at this particular point in life, I'm a little tired. Being in the trenches for a long time, and at this point, seeing the challenges that we're being faced with right now, and the reality that things are being pulled out from under us in a transformative way. And it's something that can make you lose heart. But however, when there are challenging times, sometimes we have to seize the time to challenge it. And I am comforted to know that, yes, the torch is being passed, but I feel comfortable in that persons like Dr. Bryant is grabbing hold of that torch as we continue in that race, that marathon, to undo racism. I'm very grateful for my pastor, Dr. Quick, who has come from New Jersey. He was here at the first event, and it is really special to have him because he's very much a part of that generation in which the torch is being passed, and is very much aware of the impact of trauma and leading our church to be responsive to that in a variety of ways. And it is only an example of, one institution that has to be responsive in these challenging times. We as a community has to be responsive. We as a community have to decide in what way are we going to respond. Not that we are not going to respond, but in what way are we going to respond? Because it is not promised that the changes we want will happen if we do nothing but sit back and react. Our church operates faith in action. So you must believe in what it is that you have as values, as ethics, as God-given beliefs in what is right and justice, that if you accept what is going on today, then you will suffer the consequences. But if you reject and resist, then you will see the changes you want to see and to be. And so in this particular moment, as we have this Anderson A.J. Franklin Unity Against Racism and lecture, this is only one event towards one piece of a larger puzzle. And I certainly am very grateful to Alex Peterson, the director of the Institute, and to Boston College for putting on this event. I hope it will continue in perpetuity. That is a little chilling. But on the other hand, I think it's important. And I think the message is important. And so I thank all of you for coming out and hearing the wonderful message from Dr. Tamara Bryant. And for those of you online, we are equally grateful for your participation and willingness to tune in. And for my beloved wife, who could not be here for very personal reasons, I love you. I'm sorry that you're not here to support me, but I understand that you're following my advice to stay home, which is a radical event in and of itself. But no, I understand that she would love to be here. And it also underscores another factor in the struggle of resistance, that when you have a partner who can be in the struggle with you and that you can count on, as we talk about, be able to share taking the arrows out of the back and heal each other while you're in the struggle. It is extremely important that we do this not alone, but with others. So trauma is not an individual thing that you heal by. Trauma is something that you bring and invite the community in to heal and decide how to go forward after the healing. So once again, thank you, Dr. Tamara Bryant, who I've known a long, very long time. Thank all of you who have attended today. And thank you, those online. May God bless all of you. And let's continue to fight.